Have you ever stopped to think about, well, just how the most ordinary things you use every day could actually be part of a huge global shift? It's so easy to just grab something, use it, toss it. Yeah, without really thinking. But sometimes those tiny choices, they sort of ripple outwards, don't they? Shaping whole industries, maybe even our planet's future. Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Today we're doing a deep dive into one of those things. Something you might use without a second thought, but wow, its market is just booming. Compostable straws. And this whole deep dive, it's based on a really comprehensive analysis. The Compostable Straw Market Report for 2025 from Cognitive Market Research gives us a fascinating window into this rapidly changing sector. So our mission today, it isn't just to throw a ton of data at you. No, we want to cut through all that raw data, give you a clear picture. Where does this sustainable market actually stand right now? Where is it heading? You go globally, regionally, and what insights can we pull from the projections? They run from 2021 all the way out to 2033. Think of it as your shortcut to understanding a really vital shift that's happening right now.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here, for me anyway, is seeing how quickly things can change, how public awareness combined with regulatory shifts can just completely transform whole product categories. This report, it gives us such a granular view, almost microscopic, of that change happening. And it's not just about dry numbers, right? These figures, they're really powerful indicators of a much bigger, more fundamental move towards sustainability. It's reshaping how we consume, how things get made, and, well, how businesses need to adapt if they want to stay relevant in a greener future.
Okay, so let's zoom out first. The big picture. The global market for these compostable straws, it's seeing some really impressive growth. If we go back to 2021, it generated what? Almost $1.5 billion in sales revenue, which is already quite something. But here's where it gets really interesting if you're tracking global trends. The projections are even more striking. By 2025, next year, that number is expected to hit over $1.9 billion. And okay, if you think that's a big jump, hold on. By 2033, we're looking at a projected staggering $3.3 billion. Now, that works out to a compound annual growth rate, to CAGR, of 7.1% over that whole period. I mean, 7.1% might not sound earth-shattering on its own, but sustained growth like that for over a decade in just one product category, that signals something major is happening, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. That 7.1% global CGR, when you
Right.
connect it to the bigger economic picture, it's way more than just, a healthy growth rate for straws. It really suggests a fundamental shift, almost an irreversible one, I'd argue, in both what consumers want and how industries operate. Sustainability, it's clearly moving way beyond being some niche concern or just a nice to have marketing thing. It's becoming a primary market driver. It influences everything, product innovation, supply chains, you name it.
Well,
So businesses embracing this, they're not just being green, they're actually positioning themselves for, well, long-term survival and profit. This isn't just a trend anymore. It feels like a real tipping point.
okay, got it. So with that global content set, let's kind of narrow our focus. Let's journey across the globe. Maybe start with the biggest regional market for these straws, Asia Pacific. This region is a real powerhouse here. It recorded over $640 million back in 2021 and is projected to nearly double, hitting almost $1.45 billion by 2033. And it's maintaining a strong CAGR, too, around 7%. Now, within Asia-Pacific, China's leading the charge. It accounted for roughly, what, a third of the region's market in 2021. It's projected to go over $500 million by 2033. But I'm really interested in India. It's showing some of the highest growth in the region, a really robust CAGR, nearly 7.9% through 2033. What do you think makes India stand out so much in its adoption speed, even compared to, a giant like China?
That's a great question. What's really noteworthy in Asia Pacific, and particularly in places like India, it isn't just the sheer size of the market, it's the speed of adoption. India's higher CAGR, it often points to this strong mix of factors happening at once. You've got increasingly proactive environmental policies coming down from the government, but you also have this rapidly growing middle class
Right.
that is becoming more and more environmentally conscious. They have the purchasing power, and they're choosing greener options. This creates, well, very fertile ground for these kinds of products.
Yeah.
You've got the top-down push from regulations meeting this bottom-up pull from consumers.
Yeah.
And that's just a powerful combination. It fuels really rapid market expansion. It's almost like sustainability is becoming maybe even a bit of a status symbol for a new generation of consumers there.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, let's pivot then. North America and Europe, regions we often think of as leaders on environmental issues. How are they doing with compostable straws? North America's market, for instance. It was over $320 million in 2021, projected to reach over $720 million by 2033. So decent growth, with the CAGR just under 7%. In North America, the U.S. is, well, predictably the dominant force, makes up the lion's share of that market. But it's interesting, Canada and Mexico, they're actually posting some of the highest CAGRs in the region, growing significantly faster than the U.S. Canada's looking at about 7.7% EGR, and Mexico even higher, almost 8%. That suggests things are accelerating fast there, right?
Definitely accelerating.
And then over in Europe, the market there was around $257 million in 2021, climbing to nearly $560 million by 2033. So the CAGR is about 6.7%. A little lower than North America overall. Germany and the UK are the big players, showing strong, pretty consistent growth, around that 7% mark.
Yeah.
But here's a really interesting bit, an anomaly maybe. The category called Rest of Europe actually showed the highest regional CAGR, a huge 10.2%. I mean, that's quite a jump compared to the average. What do you make of that? And also the slower growth we see in places like Switzerland or Russia.
Yeah, that rest of Europe figure is striking. It really highlights that even within regions that might seem kind of similar on the surface, the pace of adoption can be dramatically different. That super high CAGR in the rest of Europe, it suggests that maybe smaller markets, perhaps more agile ones, are integrating these sustainable options really quickly. They might have fewer, established industries or older infrastructures kind of blocking the way, or maybe just more flexible local rules allowing for faster change. Conversely, Switzerland, Russia, slower growth there could be down to loads of things. Different regulations, maybe consumer awareness isn't as high, or perhaps just the cost and availability of alternatives are different. It's definitely a patchwork, progress driven by really unique local factors.
That paints a much more nuanced picture than just looking at the continent average.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's explore two regions that might surprise some people with their growth potential: Africa and the Middle East. Not always the first places that spring to mind for cutting-edge green markets, maybe, but the numbers here tell a really compelling story. Africa's compostable straw market was about $93 million in 2021, projected to grow significantly to over $273 million by 2033. And get this, it boasts the highest regional CAGR of all regions, over 8.5%. And within Africa, South Africa's is just leading the pack. It shows the highest overall country CAGR among every single country mentioned in this report, an incredible 9.3%. Yeah. And Nigeria's right up there too, incredibly strong growth, CAGR over 9%. And the Middle East, also showing really strong momentum. It stood at about $67 million in 2021, rising impressively to over $164 million by 2033. With a really robust CAGR of nearly 7.8%, Saudi Arabia and the UAE are leading the way there, both with CAGRs well over 8%.
This really does raise that important question, doesn't it? Why are these regions, which maybe perception-wise we think of as having less established environmental policies, why are they showing such remarkably high growth rates?
Exactly.
I think it strongly suggests that leapfrogging effect we sometimes talk about. They're perhaps less burdened by legacy infrastructure, old plastic factories,
Right.
or deeply ingrained consumer habits from decades past. So instead, they can just jump straight to the newer, more sustainable technologies and products, often driven by a real desire for modernization, maybe even a fresh approach to environmental issues. South Africa's leading CAGR, that's particularly striking. It shows a powerful commitment, a significant market opportunity. They could potentially become models for how to do these green transitions really fast.
Leapfrogging effect.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a brilliant way to frame it, and it really does shift the perspective on how global sustainability actually happens on the ground. Okay, finally, let's quickly touch on South America, another region making pretty significant strides here. South American market was around $76 million back in 2021, projected to more than double to over $162 million by 2033, so a respectable CAGR, nearly 6.8%. Brazil, as you probably expect, leads the region, accounts for almost half the market value there. And Colombia also shows a strong regional CAGR, over 7.1%. So yeah, we're seeing steady, consistent progress there as well. Other countries like Argentina, Peru, Chile also showing solid growth.
Yeah, and that consistent growth across South America, led by countries like Brazil and Colombia, it just reinforces how global this shift really is. It's not confined to just specific economic blocks or, the usual suspects in Europe or North America. It's truly a worldwide thing now, driven by, well, a growing understanding everywhere of the environmental costs, the long-term benefits of making sustainable choices, and just more aware consumers. It's a clear signal that the demand for these kinds of alternatives is becoming, well, universal.
So putting it all together, what does this all mean for you listening in? Across every continent, we've seen these clear, undeniable trends. This deep dive into the numbers from cognitive market research, it really shows us a consistent, powerful pattern about the direction we're all collectively heading, whether we always realize it day to day or not.
Exactly. I think there are maybe Three key takeaways. First, just the universal growth. Every single continent, no exceptions, is expected to see a really substantial increase in compostable straw use by 2033. This isn't some regional fad. It reflects a growing global agreement on the need for sustainable solutions. It's happening everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Second, the drivers of change. We've seen it's this powerful mix of things working together. You've got growing environmental awareness among everyday people. Then you've got stricter rules like all those plastic bans popping up.
Right.
And underpinning it all, just clear, growing demand for sustainable alternatives from businesses and individuals. It's like a perfect storm pushing away from single-use plastics.
The triple threat, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And finally, number three, varied paces, but a unified direction. Okay, so some regions and countries are moving faster. South Africa, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, Mexico, those stand out. But the overall direction, it's unmistakably clear. We are collectively moving away from traditional plastics and decisively towards compostable and other eco-friendly materials all across the globe.
It really is a powerful signal about where the global economy is heading, isn't it? Towards more, let's say, conscious consumption and more responsible production. Even if it's just one compostable straw at a time, it feels like a small story, but it represents this much larger global awakening that seems to be fully underway now. So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe consider this. The compostable straw market is just one small, pretty tangible piece of a much larger, more complex puzzle. But still, it's a measurable indicator, something we can track, showing our collective global shift towards, hopefully, a more sustainable future.
And that kind of dramatic market growth, it really begs the question, doesn't it? If something as simple as every day as a straw can see such a profound transformation in, just over a decade, what other everyday products are maybe right on the cusp of a similar eco-revolution? And maybe more personally, what role could you, as a consumer, as a citizen, play in speeding up that change in your own life, in your own community? Something to think about.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the future of sustainability seen through the lens of the humble straw. We hope this has given you a useful shortcut to being well informed on what's clearly a fascinating and really rapidly evolving market trend.